Many of you have been around for a while will recall the early days of YouTube, when the religious sorts started trying to shut down real criticism, calling it hate speech and harassment.
I mean, I think it's typical of Islamic schools and the political Islamic movement to label any criticism a sort of prejudice and thereby racism, thereby trying to make people silent on criticizing it.
Well, it seems like feminism, too, also cannot win on an open and level playing field of free speech, and so they're looking to shut down real criticism by calling it hate speech and harassment, both at Google and at the United Nations. I mean, this is a direct replay of history. Remember when the UN Commission said that they wanted to classify criticism of religion as hate speech? The motion, sponsored on behalf of the Organization of the Islamic Conference, aimed to prohibit expression that would fuel discrimination, extremism, and misperceptions, leading to the polarization and fragmentation with dangerous, unintended, and unforeseen consequences. Religious groups, human rights activists, free speech activists, and several countries in the West have condemned the resolution, arguing that it amounts to an international blasphemy law. Now, would you believe it that feminism is walking that exact same path? We have both Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn talking at the United Nations about cyber hate against women and how this cyber violence is as bad as real violence. The UN defines violence against women as any act of gender-based violence that results in, or is likely to result in, physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering of women, including threats of such acts. The report notes that cyber violence is an extension of that definition that includes acts like trolling, hacking, spamming, and harassment. The report also argues that cyber touch is recognized as equally harmful to physical touch. Really? Suggesting that online harassment might be just as lethal as domestic violence or sexual abuse. Trolling men? Cyber violence against men.
And from time to time, we give celebrities a chance to read some of the mean things people tweet about them.
Is there any way we could fly Obama to some golf course halfway around the world and just leave him there?
I am now convinced Jeff Bridges is a crazy and not in a cool way. Just in a disturbed, hobo shouting at sparrows and sidewalks way.
How do you make Obama's eyes light up? Shine a flashlight in his ears. That's pretty good.
Often the onus of proving this and explaining it falls on the victims, and that's something that really needs to change going forward. So when I say humane, it's stuff like that. We shouldn't have to keep fighting to, when anybody could just go look at my Twitter mentions right now.
If you find Benedict Cumberbatch attractive, I'm guessing you'd also quite enjoy staring directly at a cat's anus.
That's my day-to-day. And it shouldn't be on people like me to have to prove this.
Trolling men? Cyber violence against men? Nah, screw that. This is the United Nations and we're talking about gender equality. Now, Anita Sarkeesian has never been shy about how the name of the game is not to present convincing arguments for feminism on the open marketplace of ideas. It's to change the rules of engagement such that no one is allowed to challenge her ideas about feminism.
Trying involves actually reading feminist literature. There's so many things, right? We could brainstorm a million ways that we could create these structural changes. And creating structural change means people have to follow those structures.
But we can make systems that actively deter that kind of behavior, which would make a huge impact on the lives of me and so many other people who are being harassed online.
Also, women get to speak first. In classroom discussions, in question periods at public events, men should not be allowed to monopolize these forums.
And when I say feminism, I don't mean just broadly feminism. I mean her brand of one true feminism.
Unfortunately, many contemporary discourses in and around feminism tend to emphasize a form of hyper-individualism. More and more I hear variations on this idea that anything that any woman personally chooses to do is a feminist act. This attitude is often referred to as choice feminism. When we talk about how to be a feminist, for me, that means being committed to something much larger than ourselves. It's understanding what role you play in our collective movements for liberation. It's re-examining our desires and interests and understanding how those are often shared by how they're often shaped, maybe shared, who knows, by capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy. We are all connected. We are all bound together under the oppression of patriarchy.
Women are being institutionally oppressed all the time in nearly every facet of our lives.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out. But feel-good personal empowerment is not how to be a feminist.
Okay, so this one true feminism does not allow women to be free to make whatever choices they want. They are only allowed to choose options from the very narrow palette prescribed by Anita Sarkeesian's feminism. But not only that, they want the rules changed to give them immunity from criticism that is leveled at almost all public figures.
There are individuals on services like YouTube that have made a living off of abusing people like Anita and I, who monetize this, who see the mobs, who aren't anonymous, who raise their funds this way.
And live from New York, it's Saturday night!
To continue attacking, stalking, and harassing us because it's a cottage industry at this point.
Some debate moments just don't need late-night comedians to be memorable. For the rest, they're Saturday Night Live.
There are individuals on services like YouTube that have made a living off of abusing people like Anita and I.
John McCain and I, we're a couple of mavericks.
I'm angry that I'm expected to accept online harassment as the price of being a woman with an opinion.
And gosh darn it, we're gonna take that maverick energy right to Washington.
My life, my words, and my actions are placed under a magnifying glass.
I believe that diplomacy should be the cornerstone of any foreign policy.
And I can see Russia from my house.
Every day I see my words scrutinized, twisted, and distorted by thousands of men hell-bent on destroying and silencing me.
That are concerned about the health care reform that is needed to help shore up our economy, to help it's got to be all about job creation.
But we can make systems that actively deter that kind of behavior, which would make a huge impact on the lives of me and so many other people who are being harassed online.
I don't agree with the Bush doctrine.
I don't know what that is.
Creating a cultural shift, I think, takes a great number of approaches, and we've been hearing a lot about systemic change, and that makes me really happy because I think that that's really how we have to do this. And so one of those approaches is, I think that the online social media sites and the places in which we are engaging on these large platforms really need to step up and change the way that their systems operate.
She's not used to men disagreeing with her.
Why? What is she going to do, arrest me?
Well, actually, yes, there's a 20-year jail sentence for disagreeing with a woman, and 30 years if she's a privileged white woman with a blog.
There are individuals on services like YouTube that have made a living off of abusing people like Anita and I.
Remember, of course, when you find one man more attractive than another, that's because you've judged him as an object. It's not so much you found him sexy as you proved yourself to be a sexist. Remember, it's not sex that sells, but sexism that sells.
Or more succinctly and more accurately, sexism sells. And why does sexism sell? Well, because it's not challenging dominant paradigms. It's simply reinforcing ideas about male privilege and entitlement to women's sexuality that are already entrenched in the cultural zeitgeist.
No! They now want to extend this to the point where anyone who they accuse of harassment is guilty until proven innocent.
There are individuals on services like YouTube that have made a living off of abusing people like Anita and I. Often the onus of proving this and explaining it falls on the victims, and that's something that really needs to change going forward. And it shouldn't be on people like me to have to prove this.
Yeah, guilty until proven innocent. That sounds like a great way to take our justice system forward. Like these feminists at Dalhousie University, where they want to change the systems such that if there's an unproven allegation against you, you must write an apology for those unproven allegations.
Any person in public office, if found to have engaged in harassment, assault, or other forms of misogyny, such as the two Liberal MPs who their allegations are unproved yet, they must write a letter, an open letter, to apologize to the women or women that they targeted.
Yeah, it's an absolute inversion of almost every first world justice system. You have feminists arguing in front of the United Nations that they shouldn't have to prove that they've been harassed. No, once they accuse someone of being a harasser, it's for the presumed guilty to show that they're innocent. Yeah, guilty till proven innocent. I've heard that a lot from feminists recently. I just can't think of why such a great system hasn't actually yet been implemented under the great guidance of the United Nations.
And while she was there, she was lured upstairs into a bedroom where she was gang raped by 7 men, while 2 other men, including her date, watched and gave encouragement. She told me that she eventually took this report to the administration, and the administration did nothing.
Rolling Stone magazine did a terrible job covering an alleged gang rape out of University of Virginia. Now, they trusted one source for the entire story.
In its expanded apology of its shoddy reporting said, oh, well, you know, this alleged victim, Jackie, she spoke about her assault. Her friends believed it. The rape activists on campus believed it.
But the idea that they didn't know some of the details of Jackie's case, that sounds a little disingenuous to me, only because when I approached Jackie about this article, she was very forthcoming about all the details.
And it shouldn't be on people like me to have to prove this.
She spoke at the raped activist, seminars. So what? That doesn't mean anything. That proves nothing.
She had alleged that she went to a fraternity party with someone she was dating at the time.
Well, I met a young woman named Jackie. She's a junior now. And she told me that when she was a freshman, she was invited on a date to a fraternity house where there was a party.
The fraternity today released a statement saying that, in fact, they had not hosted any parties that entire weekend.
According to the Post, a student who came to Jackie's aid that night now says she did not appear physically injured, as told by Rolling Stone.
While she was there, she was lured upstairs into a bedroom where she was gang raped by 7 men.
Mr. Dana said he now feels that the magazine made a mistake in agreeing to Jackie's request that it not seek to corroborate her story about the rape on September 28th, 2012. So that's a disaster.
The alleged victim, a woman identified only as Jackie. She remembers every moment of the next 3 hours of agony, during which she says 7 men took turns raping her, she told the magazine.
She said, well, maybe the party wasn't at Phi Psi, and then she told me that maybe the person who attacked her wasn't a member of the fraternity at all.
She remembers every moment of the next 3 hours of agony.
People know who are in the fraternity. You didn't give them a chance to respond, and you accused them of gang rape.
I mean,
Of course you had to ask them if they did it. Of course, I mean, that's crazy.
That's journalism 101.
And it shouldn't be on people like me to have to prove this.
A 5-month police investigation led to this conclusion.
There is no substantive basis to conclude what is described in that article happened that night.
You know, your story won't be believed if we don't have the other side. Once it comes out, the people who are identified will say, gee, nobody asked us what we thought, and stuff may surface later that we didn't include in the story that we should have included.
Rolling Stone magazine is now expanding its apology for questionable reporting in connection with an alleged gang rape at the University of Virginia. It now admits that the alleged victim, Jackie, is, quote, unsure about certain details she originally offered that wound up in print.
And of course, you've got Marcotte and other feminists using this case as an example of how much American society hates women.
Before I say anything else, I have to thank you, Sabrina, for writing this. I think you've done a tremendous act of public service, and I'm genuinely very, very grateful.
Thank you.
It is hard to read an article like this and avoid the conclusion that we live in a culture that hates women, just hates us.
I mean, part of the reason why I chose University of Virginia is because I felt that it was really representative of what was going on at campuses across the country. When I spoke to experts,
the rape activists on campus believed it. She spoke at the rape activist, seminars.
They told me that the scary truth is that if you dig deep enough, really in any campus, this is probably what you will find. That what happens at University of Virginia is probably not the exception. This is the norm. No reason to warn the rest of the campus that there had been multiple allegations of gang rape against a fraternity that continued to hold parties every weekend. So that was incredibly shocking to me, that the administration would decide not just to do nothing in her case, but nothing to warn the campus at large that there was a fraternity that was having parties and holding fraternity rush and so forth, that it had numerous now allegations against it for gang rape, but nobody was ever warned.
It's hard to read an article like this and conclude that the men in this culture, boys and men in this culture, are raised to see women as not just less than them, but in some cases as less than human.
And it shouldn't be on people like me to have to prove this.
Well, on that very sobering note, we will thank you, Sabrina Rubin Erdely, contributing editor at Rolling Stone. Thank you.
I think it's important to recognize that harassment is, as someone had mentioned, it's not just what is legal and illegal, right? Harassment is threats of violence, but it's also the day-to-day grind of you're a liar, you suck, you know, making all of these hate videos to attack us on a regular basis, and the mobs that come from those hate videos, etc.
Although oddly, Anita doesn't quite seem to think that she should be held accountable for her hate mob.
That you caused a lot of misery for several people in particular over the last couple years. You've certainly caused a lot of misery for Anita Sarkeesian in your unethical attempts to, I don't know if it's just bring money into your channel or something like that. Your attacks on Rebecca Watson, for instance. And I can't stress enough that in that regard, I will fuck you over for that one of these days if it's the last thing I ever do.
Now, to a degree, the United Nations doesn't bother me, because it's an utterly toothless organization. Indeed, the mere fact that you can argue for guilty until proven innocent in front of the United Nations and be taken seriously and get rounds of applause simply by virtue of the fact that you've cried wolf lots of times simply underscores the value of an organization that can have Libya chair its Commission on Human Rights. Google, on the other hand, is a different matter. And yes, that's the same Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn at Google strategizing about how they can best shut down criticism at Google ideas.
What are there's so many things, right? We could brainstorm a million ways that we could create these structural changes. And creating structural change means people have to follow those structures.
Google in many ways is the most powerful organization on the planet. Now, to a large part, Google's marketing philosophy has been very simple. They don't create or control content. They mostly just allow people to find what they want efficiently and then sell adverts on that search engine. In essence, they are the librarians. They don't write books, but they know where they are. The philosophy is largely the same as the best way to get rich in a gold rush is not to dig for gold, but to sell shovels. The largely unintended consequence of this is that Google mostly promotes a level playing field of free speech, because the larger that field is, the more money they make. If Google decides that they're going to insert feminist ideology into their search engine,
we are all connected. We are all bound together under the oppression of patriarchy, by capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy.
It's going to be very lose-lose for everyone. Well, everyone except the feminists, who will finally get their safe space that they've always lusted for.
Safe Space University, where we pretend that differing opinions simply don't exist. Sign up today and receive your very own set of personalized blinders, so your worldview can remain unchallenged, no matter where you go.
Now, we lose an efficient search engine, and Google shrinks the marketplace of ideas from which it harvests revenue. And they also sacrifice their reputation as impartial librarians. But more importantly, it would remove the level playing field of free speech. And that would have wider consequences, as across the world it's seen as true that those who make peaceful change impossible make violent change inevitable. And by building these anti-harassment tools to service the whims of professional whiners, they are building the exact tools for the oppression of the free speech values they proclaim to instill. This crap has infected academia too. And what you end up with is this. This was a panel at Dalhousie University.
We could maybe talk more about these, but here are some solutions, or possible solutions. On media, on media, television interviews, on platforms and political meetings, at any presentations, if there's no woman speaker, then the event does not take place. The interview is foregone, the political meeting is cancelled. One cannot get around the rule by using a woman as an MC. That's merely window dressing. Second, any sports team, group of students, or social club, faculty, where one or more of the members is sexually assaulted, verbally assaulted, sent out tweets, anything misogynist at all, these people get banned from the university and from acting at the university for 6 months. Any person in public office, if found to have engaged in harassment, assault, or other forms of misogyny, such as the 2 Liberal MPs who their allegations are unproved yet, they must write a letter, an open letter, to apologize to the women that they targeted. Also, women get to speak first. In classroom discussions, in question periods, and at public events, men should not be allowed to monopolize these forums.
There's so many things, right? We could brainstorm a million ways that we could create these structural changes. And creating structural change means people have to follow those structures.
I think that I'm doing this right now in my classrooms, in the management department. Women get to speak first. I think that is a primary issue that we actually have to look at, how we do question and answers, and we can start today. Thank you.
That open and level playing field is vital, as almost universally it's seen that good ideas fare better on that playing field than bad ones. Good ideas float to the top in the melting pot of free speech almost without exception, and those who suggest that the open marketplace of ideas should prevent criticism of them or their ideologies are doing it because their ideas cannot compete on the open marketplace of ideas. And if the only way you can get people to accept your great ideas is by prohibiting criticism of them, it might just be they're not quite as good an idea as you think it is.
But feel-good personal empowerment is not how to be a feminist.
Now, I've got to admit, it's a long time since I felt this channel was under threat. Like it was in the good old days of the fights versus Scientology, creationism, and Islam. Yeah, back in the day, I stood the line about what should be tolerated as free speech front and center. And that includes what people could say about me. And unlike with Anita and the death threats
come through on my social media, and it's just become a routine. Screen cap, forward to the FBI, block, and move on.
When I got them, the FBI did take them seriously. Yeah, who would have thought it that legitimate criticism of Islam can lead to more credible death threats than some contrived bullshit criticism of computer games? Oddly, however, the real violence faced by those who criticize Islam didn't end up with a pity party at the United Nations, while the fainting count feminists, with their nasty online comments that they got for attacking computer games, did. I mean, you've really got to give it to the United Nations here. Happily turning a blind eye to women being beheaded for being witches or stoned to death for adultery. And then getting all outraged because someone on the internet said a privileged white woman with a blog sucked. I mean, please, won't someone protect them from this horrible misogyny? But for Google and YouTube, this gives me real pause for concern about the future direction you're planning to take it. This is how I phrased it back in the day.
I personally have a band of both vigorous and at times vicious critics. Yet I understand that if I had the power to silence them, and I did silence them, that this would simply corrode the worth of this forum and the integrity of anything that I said on it. For an idea that can survive the harsh eye of public scrutiny of thousands is infinitely more valuable than an idea that can tolerate the criticism of none.
And it's exactly that criticism that people like Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn are trying to shut down. But honestly, if you're going to inject yourself and your opinions into the open marketplace of ideas, as both Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn have done, it would seem that only an outrageously entitled princess would expect the privilege to fling all the feces that they want at people and ideas that they don't like, but expect that other people should not be extended the right to criticize her or her bad ideas on that self-same forum. And let me just give you an example of the caliber of people you've invited to Google Ideas to strategize with.
In 2008 in Tokyo alone, there were 2,000 reported cases of men groping women. And that's only the amount that was reported.
Yeah, 2,000 people sounds like an awful lot, doesn't it? Until you realize that the Tokyo subway system carries about 14 billion people per year, making your chances of being sexually assaulted comparable to winning the lottery. But some will say, but that's assuming they're all unique people using it. Fine, let's say that they're all commuters that use it once per day, which reduces your chances of being groped on the subway to about 1 in 20,000 per year.
The harassment of women is so bad that the subway system even introduced women-only passenger cars as a way to curb this sexual harassment.
And according to Anita, that's such an epidemic that we need to take the lead from countries like Egypt.
Women's-only passenger cars have been introduced in many other places such as Egypt, Taiwan, Brazil, and Mexico.
Yeah, countries with good progressive attitudes to women like Egypt.
And frankly, I'm surprised we don't have them in the US because the levels of harassment that women face here as well.
And that we should bring back segregated travel sections. Like, say, for instance, reintroducing that blacks should sit at the back of their bus. For their own safety, of course. Remember, overwhelmingly, the criticism Anita gets is not because she's a woman. It's not because she's a feminist. And it's not because she's a media critic. It's because she's as full of crap as Rick Perry arguing that gays shouldn't be allowed to serve in the military.
I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm a Christian. But you don't need to be in the pew every Sunday to know that there's something wrong in this country when gays can serve openly in the military, but our kids can't openly celebrate Christmas or pray in school. As president, I'll end Obama's war on religion.
And of course, no one ever mercilessly satirized Rick Perry.
I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm an asshole, and I'm a drunk, and that I lost my lead for the Republican nomination because I'm stupid.
Because satire is only harassment and hate when it's a privileged white woman with a blog.
We shouldn't have to keep fighting to when anybody could just go look at my Twitter mentions right now.
I'm Rick Perry, and I'm a piece of shit.
Because let's be real, Google. If you're going to start policing content to the draconian levels required by the feminists you're strategizing with, then I guess I can expect this channel to be banned about 50 times over because I've harassed an awful lot of people for stupid ideas over the years. In fact, Anita would have me banned thousands of times over because she would hold me accountable for any crap that anyone did to anyone else because they saw a video that I made exposing their bullshit. And hell, by that same reasoning, she would have to be banned thousands of times over for the hate mob that she's inspired. And under this new glorious feminist devised system where everyone is guilty until proven innocent, and satire and comedy count as harassment and hate. And you banned everyone who violated one of these rules. I mean, hell, let's just cut to the chase. Once you've banned everyone for everything, I'm really not so sure that's going to enhance anyone's internet experience.